Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Effects of Social Distancing on Teen Social Emotional Development. We are so lucky to have Caroline Mcguire with us today to teach us about how to coach our teens. We are so happy to see you guys joining us. I just want to let you know you're in the right place. You're here with Operation Parent this afternoon and Caroline Mcguire. We're very excited to learn together. As we're loading up the session and attendees are coming in the gates, we just want to welcome you and let you know it's a great time to hop over to our website, operationparent.org, and register for our upcoming webinars. If you'd like to take a chance to do that while everyone's coming in the system. We recognize that many of you are potentially using this as your lunch hours, so if you'd like to take a couple minutes and finish up your lunch, or you just want to take a second and take some deep breaths while we load everybody into the system. But I did want to let you know, if you're just joining us, you're here with Operation Parent and Caroline Mcguire. We're going to spend the afternoon talking about the effects of social distancing on teens' social and emotional development. For those of you that have joined us before, we are really excited to let you know we've got a few more webinars up on our website. We've got a couple of rebroadcasts there as well, so it's great timing for you to go and check those opportunities out and see which one that you might like to join us for next. I'll tell you about our upcoming webinars as we get started here. We have youth suicide on the rise coming up pretty quickly on Monday, November the 9th. That's at 2 o'clock, and our expert is Dr. Hatim Omar. Dating abuse, what every parent needs to know, will be rebroadcasted on November 18th with Cassie Drockelman. We also have on Tuesday, December the 8th, Talking with Teens About Underage Drinking. Our guest for that presentation is Helen Whitty, who is the national president for MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Operation Parent's mission is to love and support parents by providing real-world information, connection, and most importantly, hope. I'll take just a couple of minutes for anyone who might be new to our webinar to know how we're going to utilize the system today. If you could click on the orange arrow to view your screen and open up the control panel, that would be great. About halfway down, you will see the question section. You're going to send both questions and comments here. We are going to answer as many questions as we can at the end of this webinar. And just so you know, you're going to be muted during the presentation, but the question section is a great opportunity to communicate with us. And as many of you already know, we love questions, and you can send them to us at any point during the presentation. They will come privately to us as well. We've got an amazing set of handouts. Caroline has been generous enough to share a lot of her resources with us today. So let me tell you about the handouts that you have. One is EF and Friends, and this is a handout helping your children with executive functioning weaknesses and engage socially using powerful open-ended questions and listening. We also have one entitled 10 Ways to Teach Social Skills in Daily Life. And then we have a third one entitled Boosting Your Teen's Confidence. We did email you those handouts earlier today, so you're welcome to download them from the original email, or you can download while you are live here with us as well. Oh, and I should also mention too, you have a handout with a copy of today's PowerPoint slides, a PDF version of that in your resources as well. So if you want to download them now, you can either do it directly here while we're live in the system, or you can go back later to the email from us that has the handouts attached as well. We are recording this webinar, and you will be sent an email copy tomorrow We also asked that immediately at the close of the survey, at the webinar, you take the opportunity to do the survey. This is a great opportunity for you to give us some feedback and to let us know if there are additional things that you would like to know or learn, and also the things that you enjoyed most about Caroline's presentation today. Caroline is going to tell you about her professional journey in just a moment, but I wanted to let you know that I've personally had the opportunity to listen to the Audible version of her book. And it's a game changer because it gives you play-by-play lessons and advice of what you can do at home with your team and things that you're already doing in day-to-day to teach them really powerful ways to connect with people differently. She teaches every day in her work, she's teaching kids how to connect differently with their friends and to make new friends. But the joy of the work is that they're able to, one, learn directly from their parent, who is a coach and a mentor, and teaching them to look for authentic friends, to read the reaction of others in a room, responding to their behavior, and also, just reading a room in general. And so who doesn't, need to beef up their skills in that area? So it's just so neat because it's practical. It's things that you can do at home, but it's changing a child's life and their ability to find authentic friendships. As we know, as parents ourselves, it's really difficult if we see our child struggle in any way. But when you're given tools that you can help your child have a different experience, that's what we're talking about here. And this is what Caroline is an expert in, and she's made it a niche. So I am so excited for you to meet her, to learn a little bit more about her heart and her ability to change kids' lives.
Michelle, thank you so much. You are absolutely just beautifully said. I appreciate that. And the whole reason that I wrote Why Will No One Play With Me is exactly that. And I feel like I'm so glad it is out to help parents in this really difficult time that we're in right now.
It's our pleasure. And thank you for everything you put together for us today.
No problem. I love to share free resources, and so I'm going to talk about my background a little bit here, and then I am going to mention throughout the presentation other free resources that parents can touch on.
Okay, great. Well, we'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, hello everyone, and I'm so happy to be here at Operation Parent. It is just such a wonderful group, and I know that many of you are professionals, parents, and I'm so glad to be able to share this information. My name is Caroline Mcguire, and I'm the author of Why Will No One Play With Me. I have always been a believer in parent coaching and teaching parents what professionals know, because I know we are on the front lines. I also had the opportunity or a situation that many of you are in to work with my own children last spring, as here in Massachusetts we were in quarantine. So I am looking at all of these dilemmas from many different sides, as I have been the parent dealing with the impact of COVID, and I also am a professional working with teenagers who are experiencing difficulties. I have a master's in education. I have completed social thinking level 1A. I've been working with teenagers and children for 15 years. And what I really try to do is exactly what Michelle described. I love to give very practical advice, stuff that you can apply, things that don't take, I always say you shouldn't need a PhD to help your kid. Um, and my whole goal has always been to decode what professionals know. So that's what I'm going to do today. Why will no one play with me is in layman's terms. I have a background working with kids with ADHD and formerly known as Asperger's, but I also work with shy kids, anxiety-ridden kids, all kinds of kids. And what I find is that the tools work with everyone. So my whole thing that I want to do today is give you as much as I possibly can so that you can walk away and you can help your family or the clients that you're working with. And I'll mention free content throughout the presentation because I think it's so important. And I know as a mom, there's many things I print out and I put them in my car and then I refer to them. And so Michelle mentioned some handouts. I'll also say to you that at CarolineMcGuireAuthor.com, I have literally videos of some of the methods I'm talking about today. I really try to pack in as much as I can to give to parents so that you have it. So I'll refer to those things as they come up today, like, hey, check out this, or there's a video here, and you can see that. So our goal today is to talk about how to support our young people as they are trying to make friends, keep friends, and really to promote a healthier, happier social life for social, emotional, behavioral skills, strategies to help your teenager feel empathy, show empathy, and a guide to help teens maneuver through cliques and resist bullying, and help teens during this time. I have been a firm believer and voice since the beginning of this crisis that we can still continue our teenagers' social emotional growth. And if your child had some struggles socially before COVID-19 hit, you really can continue to help them. And you may even have an opportunity to help them more because you are maybe having less activities, less demands, less things that are drawing us away. I'm going to talk about the downside too and how it's harder. And I think a lot of the methods I'm going to talk about will help you in terms of communication, which is the biggest thing with teenagers, right? They don't always let us, they don't always talk to us about what they're feeling. So here we are, we're in this strange situation. Depending where you are, you might be in quarantine, you might be worried things are going to shut down, you might be in a situation where things are opened up a little bit. It really depends. But I'm going to gear this toward this sort of different dynamic that we have right now. And so in terms of learning and acquiring new social skills, I want to first say some kids come to things very naturally. They are able to read the room, they're able to pick up on things, but a lot of kids can't. And in that case, they need direct instruction. And so one of the things that I want to say is, if kids could do well, they would do well. And so there are kids, because of their anxiety or because of the situation, who need us to become more of a coach to them and to provide them with those social skills lessons instead of the way some people pick it up, which is just naturally. I also would argue, and I always say this to teenagers when they are telling me that they don't need this help, there are hundreds and thousands of books on communication for business. The business communication books are really touching on and sort of hinting at social skills, right? And so it's something that everyone works on, right? If you want to be the best salesman, if you want to be somebody who owns their own business repairing, boats, doesn't matter. You have to have these skills. And so whenever teenagers argue with me about that they're fine, thank you very much, I always sort of say to them, this is something that thousands and thousands of people work on, and it's just cloaked in different ways. So in our sort of quarantine or different situation now, I like to think about the skills that we would be acquiring, and I like to think about experiences we can have at home to simulate that learning and to really embed that learning. So one of the things I would say is if you haven't started having dinners together, to do that, because we can have conversations, we can encourage teenagers to learn how to tell a tight story, right? Sometimes the stories meander, and there's an exercise in Why Will No One Play With Me, but it's pretty simple. It's about thinking about what you're saying and telling a tight story. We can work on listening exercises and sort of, I'm going to teach you a method of reflecting back, and you can use that at dinner. We can read cues and body language. You know, something you can do really simple is when you're talking to your child and you're feeling angry and you're feeling like they're not hearing you or reading that anger, you can sort of say, you know, read my face right now, my body. What am I telegraphing to you? We can work on self-regulation and coping skills and emotional coping skills. And as parents, we can also model that. This is a very stressful time. And as parents, we have a lot on us. But one thing we could do is to model and work on our own emotional coping skills, and then to help, like I said, and promote that within our kids. We can work on whatever specific skills your child needs, right? We have that opportunity. And it is sort of a misnomer that these things cannot be practiced in the virtual world and then translated back into the real world. I also think that given the unknown and given that this could go on for a while, it's really important that we don't just pause all social learning, but we continue it even in this sort of, you know, different environment. And I always try to think about, you know, what is it that our children need and what are they not getting, you know, and what could we give them instead? So what hurts you socially in terms of the current situation is that a lot of the way that schools have set up pods don't really give people peer groups. Sometimes it's randomized. Sometimes kids are separated from their friends. If kids already had a very thin social network so that they really didn't have a lot of deep friendships, or maybe they only had one or two friends, it's really difficult because we as adults are saying, reach out, but we don't really get what an epic ask that is, right? It's a really big ask to suggest that a teenager who doesn't have a deep social network, right, who maybe doesn't have people to turn to, can reach out and turn to those people. There's a lot of social dynamics going on, right? And so, you know, maybe the teenager doesn't read those dynamics, or maybe they're actually acutely aware of them and therefore feel anxious and nervous. And choosing friends that you don't like might be a factor, right? But in this current situation, a lot of teenagers are saying to me, you know, I have only who I have. And what we are asking them often is to maybe move away from those people, but they might be feeling like, well, I don't have anyone else to go to, and now I'm in this weird dynamic where I'm not even at school. A lot of the way that schools are set up, if we have returned to in-person school or hybrid school, is that kids are having lunch without their friends. They're sitting in these, you know, desks 6 feet apart or outside. There's plastic between them, and they're not allowed to bring out their cell phone, and they're not allowed to necessarily even FaceTime a friend. A lot of after-school activities are canceled, and we also have this other dynamic that a lot of teenagers have brought up to me, which is that their friends might not be engaging in safe physical distancing and COVID practices. So now they have to make choices. And that's hard, especially if you are not someone who makes friends easily, because again, we're kind of asking them to do something that's out of their comfort zone. So one of the things I'm going to talk about today are some methods that you can use to talk about all this. Because one of the biggest things that parents always say to me about teenagers is that they tend not to take our advice. Parents will say to me, I have good advice, I gave them good advice, and they didn't take it. And so one of the things I want to say to you is that if we shift the way we communicate, whether it be about, I know it's hard, but you need to reach out to people, or, hey, there is a club, it's virtual, but hey, what if you joined? Maybe you could meet some people, or, the way that they are maybe interacting with the family or anything. If we shift the way we communicate, we're going to give them the chance, with the method I'm going to teach you today, to be a lot less defensive. It's going to lead to conversations going better. And it's a method you can use with them about anything difficult, anything you need to talk about, anything you need to problem solve about. So the coaching method that I'm going to talk about is made up of two skills. One is to use open questions, and the other is to use what's called reflective listening. And the idea here is that when we reflect back to a teenager what we heard them say, we give them a 360-degree view. We hold up a mirror to what is going on in their lives. And so part of learning social skills is becoming a better noticer, and part of sort of that maturity and emotional reasoning that we're looking for in teens is for them to become more self-reflective, right? So two of the big social emotional competencies, two of the things we want are self-awareness and self-reflection, right? So when we use some of these coaching methods, we really allow the teen to become more reflective, and I'm going to get into that. Part of this is that connection is a verb, right? We have to develop social skills so that we can connect. We have to engage and place yourself in environments where we can actually connect and foster connections. We have to interpret others' reactions and adapt our body signals. We have to build bonds with people, and that takes time in relationships, and nurture those relationships. And many teenagers that I work with don't necessarily want to engage in the action of connection. They want it to kind of just happen. Or if we look at this graphic, there's several things that kind of could go wrong. And so my first piece of advice is to think about, what are the steps that your teenager can or cannot do? And if there are things in this graphic that they can't do, right? Maybe they don't have specific social skills to chit chat. Maybe they have overreactions to things. Maybe they take things very personally, and if they see a text that rubs them the wrong way, they get into fights with other people. If there is a specific skill, we want to develop that skill and work on those skills, because that's sort of getting in their way of them actually having that connection. And the process I'm going to teach you in terms of communication, it actually will also really help, because a lot of times you can't even get started. It's like the elephant in the room, and you can't get them to agree to even work on any of this or think about a different approach. So I love to talk about the process to become friends, right? So the process to become friends is we have to think about how someone is similar or different from us. We have to engage in small talk. We try to learn more about them. We share information about ourselves, and we find common experiences and situations. And we see potential friends, and we bridge from a shared activity to something that we would see them one-on-one or outside of school. So as you can see with COVID, there's a lot of problems with that process, because we are having a very sort of stilted existence. And so if a kid doesn't necessarily have the best social skills, or they're so overwhelmed with anxiety, they're not necessarily going to be able to, pause and think, okay, this is different, but how do I do the same thing and just do it in a way that is, with the dynamic that I'm being dealt right now. Many times they are sort of, get stuck, and we as parents or as their clinician, we're asking them to think about things a different way, and they just don't. So steps to help to learn new social skills, and I go over this in depth in Why Will No One Play With Me, because I teach you to be your kid's social skills coach. We have to identify our child's story or mindset. And so by that, I mean, many times kids have a story that they tell themselves about being social, or they have a mindset that doesn't necessarily allow them to, feel that they need to reach out. They feel people will reach out to them. And the communication method I'm going to teach you really helps with this. We have to kind of pave the way, right? They have to be willing to work with us, and then we have to pave the way toward them working with us. We have to coach them and have like collaborative conversations so that they're willing to talk with us. They're willing to problem solve. And you have to improve their understanding of the social world. Many of the kids I work with, they don't have necessarily a good beat on how the social world works, that people plan ahead, that people see each other outside of school. And then we have to create an image for them to navigate toward. Modeling is so important, and we have to help them to think about and understand the models and what it is that they could really try to mirror their behavior after. And then we have to practice and learn. And one of the things I would say is that we really can translate this learning into the real world, right? So if we practice in the virtual world and we find people who share similar interests, we're able to teach them how to decipher the sort of social norms. Everybody has social norms in community, even a virtual environment, right? There are social norms, even on a Discord or one of these online platforms. We can help them take a bird's eye view of their role and notice the group dynamics. We can help them interpret social cues. And one of the things that the communication method I'm going to teach you does a lot is it helps teenagers step into someone else's shoes and consider how something is received, right? So that they can adapt their communication to the social norms around them. They can test the norms of the community, and they can make small talk and then bridge to deeper conversations. Studies have been done that show that if people become friends in an online community, but then they text and meet up outside that community, safely, of course, then they will actually become friends. And so what I'm doing with a lot of teenagers I'm working with is I've convinced them, join this club that your school is now offering, and maybe it is virtual, but if you join and then you text people or you go to Google Hangout, you're going to actually bridge toward friendship. But if you never go to the club, or if you never attend anything, you don't have the chance for those touches, right, where you're interfacing with people. And part of this is also building bonds and developing and nurturing relationships. So one of the other things I do with teenagers, and I promise the communication method I'm going to teach you will help with this, because a lot of times they don't want to, is that I talk to them about light touches. If you see something funny, send it to the friend. To have that outreach over and over again during the week, not to pelt someone or to be needy, but to remind them of your existence and to actually have built-in infrastructure. So a lot of the kids I work with who don't necessarily have the best organizational skills, and we have to admit homeschooling is really taxing kids, or even hybrid schooling, I have them figure out built-in ways where they are going to encounter people who are potential friends or who are friends, and it's not something that we have to conjure up every week. It is that club, it is Model UN, it is their after school job where they are going to encounter potential friends. So the communication method that coaches use works really well with anyone. I always joke it works with mother-in-laws, it works with coworkers, it works with anyone in your life who's challenging. And the idea here is that we use open-ended questions and reflective listening. So open-ended questions encourage your child to talk. So they're things like how come, what happened, and they use this idea instead of saying, will you commit to text someone this week? You say something more like, I noticed that it's hard to text and I'm wondering what gets in the way, right? And so what happens is that if you answer an open question, and I think you've probably experienced this as an adult, you hear and you reflect on what you're saying, and it's almost like you float above your body and you hear yourself talking. As you give answers, the answers and the questions can be designed by you as a parent to try to help them take a bird's eye view. So instead of saying, you always go to people last minute and then people have plans, right? You could say, what are the patterns you see? What do you think people are doing? What is it that kind of has happened in the past, right? And so by doing that, it's more neutral, but also you're calling up to them a bird's eye view of things, right? Instead of saying, every week we go through this, you don't text anyone, you don't try to make plans, you don't invite them for, 6 foot apart, sit in the backyard, play date or hangout, and now it's the weekend and you have nothing to do, right? Instead, we're saying to them, like, what's happened in the past? Like, what's been the blocker? And they have to come to you with the answer of, well, in the past, I didn't text them in time. And now they're going to become very aware of the patterns. The other thing about open questions is you get truthful information, right? So there's probably, being teenagers, things we don't know. It gives them a chance to develop self-talk. So part of the management system of the brain, or the executive function system of the brain, is self-regulation, organization, all those functions. And one of the things that builds that bird's eye view, which is known as metacognition, is to have that self-talk or that inner coach. And a lot of times when kids have weaker social skills, or they just don't sort of read the room, they don't necessarily take that bird's eye view of a situation. And so, the kid who asks a million questions in class and drives everybody a little crazy, or the kid who, second guesses everyone, they don't necessarily get the correlation between that thing that they're doing and the fact that people are kind of put off by them. And so what we want to do is to help them to be better aware of social ripple effects, basically. And so these open-ended questions really create a more reflective experience. And what I would also advise is make it a short conversation. You're not looking to sit down and talk for 30 minutes. You're just looking to ask them a question and then step back a little bit. And I also think that sometimes we make events like Halloween, New Year's Eve, things like this, we build them up because we as adults want to make sure they have something to do, or the kid is sort of crushed. But I think the one thing about the current COVID situation is that everybody is sort of experiencing an awkwardness about these big events or about things going on. And so it almost gives our kids who are a little lonelier kind of a cloak, or kids who are experiencing a lot of turmoil in their lives. It allows them a little bit less pressure because everybody is struggling. And I think it's a great opportunity to work on things because we don't necessarily have to feel that we're the only one. Everybody's struggling with everything. The other technique here is reflective listening. So this is the easiest one of them all. You literally just repeat back, either using your kids' own words or using the gist of what they said. And so you are basically confirming and capturing their thoughts. You're clarifying. Maybe you got it wrong. Maybe you didn't understand. It's very validating to them, right? So it's going to give them this sense of validation. And it allows them to feel that you're expressing empathy for them. And as they hear themselves, they could not only just clarify, hey, that's not what I meant, but it also allows them to really reflect on things. So I'm thinking of, situations where you sort of defend your political position or you defend your position with a spouse. And as you're defending yourself, sometimes don't you think to yourself, oh, this isn't really what I mean. I'm really going too far with this, right? So the idea here is that we are allowing our child to think about and take this bird's eye view, and it's very neutralizing. They literally use this technique in prisons. So that's why I joke you can use it with the difficult people in your life and with bosses. But what I find with this also is that it really allows the teenager to think about things, and it's something simple you can do, especially with teens who are not big talkers, to kind of have a conversation about something. And again, it holds a mirror up to their statement. There's no point, I'll see you when there's a vaccine, is something somebody said to me this week, right? Other kids have said to me, I know, Caroline, that you want me to do all this, but it's just too hard. So I would reflect that back to them, right? Okay, so what you're saying is it's just too hard, and I want you to do this, but it's just so hard. And in doing that, they also get to sort of look at their statement and look at the way that they're thinking. And what I've found over the years is many times teenagers will then sort of shift or soften themselves. It's something I would incorporate into daily life because it really can be a way to shift toward a more collaborative communication style. So when you're trying to problem solve with them, you use this communication style. When you're trying to get them to think about, partnering with you. And the other piece of this, again, is this bird's eye view. So this metacognition is an executive function skill, the management system of the brain, and it allows us to do a few really important things that pertain to social. It has us look accurately at our skills and abilities, how much effort are we putting in, and then look at past experiences and take those learnings and help them to inform our future plans. So one of the things I've noticed over the years is a lot of kids who don't have great self-awareness or don't have or struggle with social skills, they tend not to take this bird's eye view of the situation, and they tend not to look at people and situations and think, what do I know about that person from the past? This is even true with teachers and professors, right? They don't think, well, that teacher has told me that they are not going to let me do a rewrite in the past, or that their skills and abilities mean that they really struggle with certain projects. And so one of the things that the reflective listening and open-ended questions do is they help to build this metacognition so that you're helping your child take a bird's eye view of a situation without you pushing your agenda and telling them, which neutralizes it and makes it much more user-friendly, right? So I can use an example. I've been working with a teenager who really struggles with being a little reactive, and if they see the ... of the text and know that someone has read their text and hasn't responded, they come up with a whole story, and then they tend to shut people out. And so you take this bird's eye view, right? What do I know about that person in the past? Oh, they're playing all these sports and they're crazed. What do I know about, my relationship with them? In the past, have I overreacted to people reading texts and not responding? Okay, maybe if I pause and let things go for a few days, I can see if this is them ignoring me or if this is just that they're busy. And so it allows them to have a much more planful discussion and approach to friendship. A lot of parents worry, and adults, we all worry about empathy and our children having that piece of empathy and showing empathy. So one of the things too that we really want to do is teach them to take people's perspective, step in other people's shoes. So the open questions work for this too, and it's part of daily life. You don't have to have a special sit down. It doesn't have to be something that you do that's like a specific activity. Just in daily life, as you're folding laundry, you're at the kitchen counter, as you're in the car, you can ask them, what did they notice about their friend's life, and to ask them questions about people. How is it for teachers right now? What might your teacher feel, when kids are running around in the background? They seem really harsh, but what's going on for them, right? And so what happens is that we are building the muscle that is so important for emotional intelligence and growth, to help our child reflect on other people's state of mind. What do those other people feel? Why might they be feeling that way? And it gives less of a one-dimensional approach. And I would argue it really develops those critical thinking skills as well, to think about and take other people's perspectives and understand other people and what they're going through. And so it's a simple way, using these questions, where you can ask them, why might someone feel this way, or why might this be going on? Sibling conflicts, I'm sure, are as out of control in your lives as they are in the people that I work with. And so this is also a way to help us, as we are in the house too much together, show empathy to each other. And it does really work, and it's not something that they're going to, shy away from as much. And if they give a simple couple answers and they don't go into a deep conversation, let that go and keep moving forward, because this is tough and some kids aren't talkers. How to find friends during social distancing. So I've talked to so many people and been working on this so much, and I am trying to, in every way I can, help families. I think that there are online communities and clubs that are forming. I think schools are starting to really put that together. I've even looked with clients of mine for safe and effective things thrown by junior colleges and other places that they can join to learn something or join an online community. I always say to go to cousins, close friends, consider older or younger kids to be with. Some families are engaging in bubbling and, small group activities. One of the things that I would also say is that it, depending where you are and what sort of recommended for safety in your state. Some states like Massachusetts were allowed to have a backyard hangout, where 2 or 3 teenagers sit 6 feet apart, and that can be something you facilitate to really help them. But the coaching method will help the most, I think, because if we're dealing with this, strange situation, this way, you can have conversations about it. And I do encourage you to, reach out to schools and ask them, what could we start in the community to give teenagers something to attend. Loneliness is obviously a huge problem for teenagers. Pre-COVID, teenagers completely developed to the point where they really value their peer group. Their social status is incredibly important to them, and they don't have that proximity, like I said, anymore. Anxiety can be a huge factor here. We may have to get a teenager help for their anxiety, because it can be exhausting for them reaching out. And that's why I favor activities where it's sort of built in. They attend the club or they attend the online activity, and therefore it's already created that infrastructure. I also am doing a lot of light touches with teenager, where I'm helping them, watch a Netflix movie with someone, or have those light touches so that they remind other kids, and sort of have that shared connection. in terms of anxiety is a huge problem for some kids, and they may be experiencing, more unwillingness to join things due to rejection sensitivity or past trauma, and fear of the unknown. Why Will No One Play With Me, as well as my website, CarolineMcGuireAuthor.com, do have a lot of resources about helping kids with emotional regulation. I have a whole video on rejection sensitivity that you can find, and that can be something to work on with your child, because during these difficult times, obviously anxiety kind of soars more. And if your teenager needs help, and you notice that they have intense worry, sadness, crying, irritation, it's important to go to a medical professional. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. So I wouldn't pretend to diagnose depression. But, if you notice a shift in terms of headaches, extreme behaviors, sleeping habits, those are all signs, and you want to go to a medical professional and make them aware of how your teen or the teen you're working with is struggling. I have a lot to say about conversation tips, but I'm going to keep it brief. Conversation and making conversation is one of the things many teenagers really struggle with, and especially if they have felt in the past that it hasn't gone well. Again, I like them to step into someone else's shoes. A lot of the teens I work with will say nothing because they think that that's better, because they're so worried that what they say needs to be cool. But then the problem is that people think they're kind of creepy and weird if they're not saying anything. And I've even had kids where, they're sitting in Spanish class and someone says to them, "Hey, how are you?" And they don't respond because they're so in their head and they're so worried about everything. So what I would say to you is the first thing you probably need to do is have a conversation about that having a conversation issue. We can work on this at dinner. We can work on this one-on-one. I have activities called Build on That to teach them to build conversations that I'm going to touch on in a second. But, if we have a couple questions we can ask people sort of in our pocket, then it makes it easier. So with those kids who just sit there in silence, what I usually do is we work on building conversations, and I have them talk to me back and forth using conversations that they're not necessarily as comfortable with, using topics. But I also give them a couple of questions that they can ask someone or reflect back to them and talk about something. And we really work on the coping techniques for anxiety. One of the biggest things we always have to do is shift their mindset, right? So that if they think that not saying anything is better, again, I use my open questions. So what do you think the other person feels when they're trying to talk to you and you don't say anything, right? And a lot of times when I say that, their parents have talked to them till they're blue in the face, but by saying that, it kind of enlightens you, right? And so they start to really think about how that presents. And then we have to cope with anxiety before we can move forward. So this is one of my bridging to conversation activities that I have in Why Will No One Play With Me. And so, I give kids almost like a cheat sheet, right? So if someone talks about, a topic, sports, teachers, time of day, you can literally just say, "Hey, tell me more about that," or, "Oh, I love that teacher too." I have questions, how was that? Hey, I noticed, insert whatever topic. What was that like? That I teach them so that they have a go-to. Many times kids who have trouble making conversations really develop a go-to that isn't necessarily the best go-to. Their go-to might be to, not answer back, or to switch the topic to something they're interested in. And so what we're really trying to work on is this knowledge that they can bridge. And one of the things I'm finding that's sort of interesting about COVID is that many of the teenagers who are shy or who struggle with this, they do fine in these virtual worlds, right? And now we're going to have to translate that confidence back into the real world. But confidence is key here. Once you know you can do something, right? Once you've ridden a bike, you feel better about riding that bike. And again, going back to one of my earlier slides, you have a model, right? So if you're in total quarantine, you can practice this with your child. You can practice this with having dinner conversations. Grandparents are very lonely and would love to chat with them. And you can use things like Google Hangout and other virtual forums for them to practice this and then work on translating it back into the real world. But I'm finding that some kids actually do really, really well in the virtual world in a way that they don't in the in-person. I do want to give you hope. It's so important to understand that for some kids, they really need to build these skills. And for other kids, it just comes naturally. The entrance of COVID kind of puts us back into a position where most kids are having to stretch themselves and to change their social emotional approach and learn things. And so I think that for those kids who struggled before, maybe you noticed that during COVID, they really didn't have a lot of hangouts. Nobody really reaches out to them. To me, this is an opportunity for us to work on something so that when they go into the workplace and into the real world, they have those skills and they have whatever choices that they want. And I think then for other people, the dynamic of COVID has made it harder, and maybe they're now struggling. But what you pay attention to grows. A really good friend of mine always says that. And I've had hundreds of teenagers, shift their approach. And I think the communication technique, the coaching technique of the reflective listening and the open questions is meant to help you. I hate to say it because as parents, it doesn't always come down to us, but help you shift your approach a little bit so you can even have a conversation about this. And you don't have to say, oh, you're struggling with social skills. You can talk about it as relationship building, friendship building. If there's something that they want to do in life, I always use that as a carrot, right? And I always twist and show them the social piece of that, right? What you're going to have to do, and as an electrician is you're going to have to be, interfacing and interacting with people. And what I tend to tell parents to do and educators is to have some of this become part of daily life so that everyone in the family, for instance, is working on telling a tight story, and everyone who's part of your family network is sort of helping and working on better listening skills or is reflecting. Every time you are having an argument, you can ask them to read the social cues. When something goes on, you can point to the TV or you can point to a situation and ask them to read them or point it out. And so I would suggest that we really support our teenagers right now, because I think it's just so hard, and give them something good to focus on every day. Give them something that they're good at and their strengths to focus on every day, and then to really work on those skills. And like I mentioned, at my website, CarolineMcGuireAuthor.com, I have a lot of free resources that you can use to build these skills, as well as why will no one play with me. I want to share some resources because you are definitely not alone, that you can turn to help with the things that are going on. Cultures of Dignity and parentingmontana.org, Confident Parents, All amazing resources. So I'll leave that there for a second. And then I have a free video for you that you can go to Caroline Mcguire author and this link, and it shows you how to cope with anxiety and bombardment. And I walk you through helping with self-awareness and self-regulation with a child of any age, and watching for body signals and coping with emotions, because all of this is something that parents are sort of on the front lines and you're trying to help your child with. So definitely take advantage of that resource. And then this is where you can get the book, Why Will No One Play With Me? It's available anywhere books are sold. And questions.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation, and we are getting questions in. So let me just get to the slide here and get this all up and ready to go. And my computer is deciding it is being finicky. All righty, here we go. Come on. It is not cooperating. Sorry, guys. My computer is locked up in the background. So what I'm going to do is just talk through some of the last few slides for Operation Parent, and then we will get into the question and answer feature time. In the meantime, while we're doing this, if you do have questions, we've gotten a few in as the presentation was going on. Please go to the question feature in your webinar control panel and click in there and go ahead and place your question there, and then we will come to those in a few moments. Just wanted to go back over the webinars. Yeah, I'm completely locked up. This is a little bit frustrating here. Sorry, everybody.
Hey, Caroline, can you forward the slide by chance?
Yep, I absolutely was just going to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm doing that. I just had it set to go from where we were, but then it locked up. So there we go. It finally decided to unlock. Yay! Okay, good. So, not that everything ever works completely the way it's supposed to with technology. So just a reminder for our upcoming webinars, we did have a few people come on and ask. The next one coming up is on youth suicide with Dr. Hatim Omar. Please register at operationparent.org. When you get into our website, you want to go to resources and then click on that drop down and then go to free webinar, all the way at the bottom, webinars, and then you can register there. So you will see there a couple webinars that are coming up. We've got youth suicide on the rise. This next one is a rebroadcast. This is from a previous webinar that is recorded. So you will be listening and watching the webinar. You can ask questions. You just will have the answer come to you via email within 72 hours after the event. So please understand, this is a rebroadcast, and this one is on dating abuse, on what every parent needs to know, with Kathy Drockelmeyer. Great presentation. The next one that we will have live is Talking with Your Teens About Underage Drinking on December 8th. And this one is up and ready for registrations also at our website. And this one is with Helen Whitty, who is the current MAD president, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. So again, please take the time to go to our website and register for these events. Couple specials that we are running. We have a parent handbook, and in our elementary handbook in particular, we do have a section, a page on friendships, and talking a lot about some of the things that Caroline was talking, but just how do you help your kids understand friendships, makes friendships, and especially, coping with some of the challenges that come with it. So the information that she gave today is so vital to this in general, whether it's COVID, in the NTI world that a lot of parents are sitting in, but just in general. So again, the parent handbook is there for elementary. The middle and high school book goes into over 40 topics and more in depth, from trends, misconceptions, and warning signs. We have sections on social media, mental health, and then drugs, alcohol, dating, abuse. Please keep in mind, we do run a special right now. If you would like to order one parent handbook, you can receive 20% off one parent handbook using the code there that is giving, and you have until next Friday to do so. You can go order online at operationparent.org and then go to our shop, and then you will enter that code and it'll calculate the discount for you. Now, we do get a lot of questions because we get a lot of organizations and schools who order bulk orders. So they're looking for over 100 handbooks. If you are interested in doing so, we are running a special to the end of October, end of this week, that is for 20% off a bulk order of over 100 handbooks. So if you are interested in ordering over 100 handbooks, please call our office at the number listed here, or you can send an email to Ann@operationparent.org, and she will calculate your discount and invoice and ship. So you need to do it that way because the discount can't be calculated in our store for that kind of bulk order, only for the onesies and twosies. So please go ahead and do that. That would be wonderful. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you have not signed up for our newsletter or e-newsletter, I encourage you to do so, again, at our website. That e-newsletter and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter also lets you know what's coming up webinar-wise and what Operation Parent is up to. With that, we're going to go ahead and start the question section. Caroline, hold on. Let me go up here. I know we had one question came in during the event, and you kind of talked to it, but I understand this one so well. Because the question was, what do you do when your child won't talk? Yeah, I have one of those. So the question in particular was, hold on, here we go. When asking open-ended questions and the response is usually, I don't know, are there techniques that can help draw out the real answer? Great question, thank you.
Great question. And it's a question I get a lot. If you look at any of my media clips from the book launch last year, I swear every reporter in America asked me that question because they had one at home who wouldn't talk. And I'm well aware of that. So what I would say to you too is sometimes we have to have sort of a collaborative conversation with a kid where we say, listen, I don't want to pester you, but I really need to have information from you. So, there are going to be times when I'm going to ask you and I need you to give a fuller answer. And if the kid doesn't have, a language delay or a reason for their reluctance other than just they're not a talker, they can do that at that time. Some kids literally you need to lay it out like a buffet. Is it this or is it that? And you have to kind of give them the options and they can pick. Is it that you just feel like there's no point? Is it that it's hard for you? And they might still give you a very short answers. The other thing, and I totally have been guilty of this, every parent has, sometimes they're non-talkers because we have talked at them or made these epic conversations so much that they just get so sick of it that their reaction is to say, I'm fine or nothing, right? And so if you know that's the situation, I would say back off a little bit, right? And have just these little breezy, short conversations for a while and sort of show them that it's okay. If you ask them a question, we're not going down a rabbit hole. We're not going to talk about, everything under the sun and every hard thing when they just walk through the door from school. And the other thing is that there are kids who genuinely have a language delay. And, with younger kids like that, we have to use pictures and we have to, work with a speech pathologist. And sometimes when those kids grow up, they still just give us very short answers. And so again, I would offer them options and talk about it. I don't want to interrogate you, but like I try to talk and you don't give me a response.
Right. Thank you. They're great ideas. And I wish I had known a lot of that before. Okay, so let's see here. So this is just a general question and I'll go over it real quick. When we send out the recording, FYI for everyone, we do send out a follow-up email and that'll go out tomorrow afternoon, about 24 hours after we end this event today. So about 3:30 tomorrow, you will get an email from us. In that email, you will receive the webinar recording link. If you, obviously for those attending the live event, you will have a certificate of attendance attached, as well as the survey. The resources, if you did not get the email before the event today, you did not get the handouts, I encourage you to download them now. If you're listening to the recording and you did not get them, you can send an email to marybeth@operationparent.org and I will get you those handouts. How do you know the difference between a teen who is fine with just 1 or 2 friends versus it being an issue that they are limiting themselves to such a narrow friends set?
Oh, that's a good question. So here's my thing. There are kids who really value having 1 or 2 deeper relationships. They're kind of old souls, right? And that's fine as long as they can produce the communication that you need to function in the real world. So this is always my litmus test to parents, right? I'm not looking for everyone to be the same, and especially with kids who are more introverted, sometimes they are actually okay with just 1 or 2 deep relationships. But the danger of what I call the 2-friend problem is this. If someone moves away, or if there's any kind of, rift, or if, one of the friends decides to make more friends, they can be left in the lurch. So I try to have that conversation and really look at it, again, using questions. What do they want from friendship, right? What makes these relationships enjoyable? What makes them like this kind of relationship? You seem to like deeper friendships. What is it, that you like about that, right? So don't tell them your agenda, hear from them. But, that's sort of my litmus test. If they are having 1 or 2, 3 friends and they have these deep relationships, it can be beautiful. But my concern is, can they go to a job interview? Can they communicate with a boss? Can they reach out to a coworker and, be on a committee with someone? And if they can, and they're just, not necessarily looking to have a million acquaintances, that's fine. But a lot of times with those kids, the problem is they have those 2 friends, but they can't make new friends too. So when they go to college, when they move, when they go to different situations, they don't have the communication skills. In that case, I know they may be contented, but I would want to work on those communication skills so that they have choices. And that's what I always tell teenagers. I don't care what you do, but I want you to have choices. I want you to not, many adults will tell me that they stay in the same job because they literally don't feel confident enough and they don't have the social skills to switch jobs. So I want kids to know that, and I want them to feel like they have the skills and they can use them for whatever their agenda is.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. We have a lot of people on here saying thank you for the great webinar. It's very informative. So you did a wonderful job. Parents and our attendees are very excited about the information you shared. Somebody asked, what made you get started in this type of work, especially in regards to friendship and youth? Was it your own children, or was it through counseling that you became so involved in this?
I actually have kind of an interesting story, and it's the front part of Why Will No One Play With Me, the introduction. So I was a kid with ADHD and learning disabilities. I was in a pretty intense job when I was about 29, 30 years old, and I was looking to do something else. I was successful, but my husband and I used to look at each other and say, how would we ever have children? Like, we were both living on a plane. And so I read an article in the New York Times about coaching and about helping kids with ADHD, and I really thought, I would be good at this. And so when I was laid off, I retrained, and I did like a 2-year program to learn this. When I was first working, I was working with more academic skills, and I noticed social just kept coming up. And then I noticed that parents really had nowhere to turn, that if you were a kid who has a diagnosis or receives certain supports, you could have those supports. But if things weren't sort of bad enough, that kids were sort of in this netherland. And, you know, my idea of parent training and teaching parents what we as professionals know, it just wasn't something that was happening. It's still not really happening. And so I started going down that road, and that's one reason I got my master's degree, because I had the idea for Why Will No One Play With Me, and I kept thinking someone else is going to come out with this, but no one ever did. And so it's sort of interesting because now schools and everyone are turning and saying, wow, we need to educate parents more because they can't teach at home because they don't know enough. And I've been saying for years, you have to teach parents because we're the ones who reinforce. We're the ones facing the dilemma about, you know, do I push them to talk? Do I let it go that they have two friends? And so what I've always been trying to do since this idea started within me was to give parents sort of the neurological information, the brain-based information, the child development information, so that you can make an informed decision as a parent. So that's how it started. And I now, ironically, because, you know, life likes to have little ha-has, I have one daughter who could be friends with anyone. As a matter of fact, one of the things I'm sad about is they always move her to kind of be the buffer kid. And so she's always being, you know, placed with people she doesn't know. And then my son really struggles socially. So, you know, you have these two opposing ends. And so I've lived both lives, right? I've lived the life of the kid who, you know, has a language delay and doesn't really talk much. And then I have the daughter who, you know, I could drop her and she'd be fine.
Oh, wow. Okay, next question is, I have a son that is very defiant and has been diagnosed with anxiety. We have done 3 years of therapy, but it cannot get through to him. What do you suggest?
So I would suggest first that you do things with him that build your relationship with him and that are fun. What happens with a lot of kids, and it's not blaming, I totally get why this happens, is that their anxiety or their issues, you know, we kind of live a life surrounding working on those issues or talking about them. And so our relationship with them gets tougher. And then, you know, they won't engage in the kind of skill building or the kind of help that you need them to. And so the first thing I would do is I would make sure that, you know, the majority of your interactions with him are fun. Are you having a fun relationship with him? The more relationship you have, the more intimate you become, the more you can use that as a bridge to talk about tough stuff. Anxiety is a really hard thing. And I think a lot of times it you know, keeps kids from opting in. I also would suggest that if he's open to it, and this may take time, and by time I literally mean a year, I would also start to introduce him to things like, you know, have him watch some, you know, some information about anxiety and information about, you know, people who've dealt with this and overcome, because it's very lonely and you feel like you're the only one, and that will sort of also lessen it. But I really think when kids won't talk about something, it's an elephant in the room. We need to kind of reset and then try the communication method I taught you today. You know, get Why Will No One Play With Me, read about it, and it'll really teach you in depth so that you, when you have conversations, it is more peaceful for him, which will allow him to engage more.
Okay. This one, Kathy, you asked this question. What do you do if a teen contacts people online because they are uncomfortable turning on their camera?
So the question is more like they're comfortable turning on their camera and you don't know who they're engaging with online?
I guess. Yeah, because I read it. What do you do if your teen contacts people online because they are uncomfortable turning on their camera? So
Well,
I guess, yeah,
I
I'm not quite
think
sure.
I think there's a few things there possibly. One
Okay.
is safety. Obviously, we have to be monitoring
Mhm.
what they're doing online, because we want to make sure they're safe and we want to monitor what networks they're accessing. Some
Mhm.
kids will contact online because they are not comfortable. Maybe they're not even comfortable turning on their camera online, in which case I kind of go back to my original advice, which is working with them, using the open questions and helping them
Mhm.
to be more comfortable, so that they can more fully engage and get confident about it. But I do think it's good that we talked about safety, because safety is a huge issue, and we as parents should know every text they send, everything they do, because they're not necessarily equipped with the judgment to make sure that they're doing safe things.
Okay. If a teen has a history of being rejected in the past, what strategies can a parent use to help them take more social risks with peers in the present?
So I completely sympathize with this position. A lot of the kids that I work with have had such um, a really hard time, and they have a lot of sensitivity around that. The first thing I'd say is, are there any social skills issues, right? So was the rejection or the situation about circumstance? Really look at it objectively. If there were things, most people who are bullied have social skills issues. And that isn't a judgment. That's just, something we need to help them with, just like we help them with so many other things. And so that would be my first thing. I want to make sure that they have the skills. The other thing is I want them to be doing something they're good at every single day so that they get more confident. And I want to give them, once they have those skills, a new place to experience relationships where the past is not present and where they can start fresh, but they have to have the skills first, right? So moving camps, moving schools, it only works if you have the skills to actually have those relationships. And then they may want to do some therapy, and they may want to look at, those past hurts and help them to become less intense so that they can, look at things without, feeling those bruises of the past
Mhm.
as sort of the drivers of their relationships.
Okay. A question here is to how to change the way to communicate between parents and a child when they do not have respect for each other. That's a hard.
That's a great question. I think I'll go back to the two things. One,
Mhm.
do fun things and do things that your child is interested in, and also to have those more collaborative conversations. Instead of going down the you're fighting route, talk to them about their interests, show them kindness, and
Mhm.
have those open questions and the reflection, so that you can have that bridge toward talks about how we can respect each other better. If you feel like there's an explosiveness, if there are more safety issues, that's where you may want to reach to a mental health professional. But a lot of times I think people go into a bad cycle, and the more collaborative conversations are literally the way that professionals help families talk to each other better. And don't make everything about the source of conflict.
Mhm.
Have other things you do together.
Okay. Got a couple thank yous here. It says, just a big thank you because my son is shy, but karate is helping him to be confident. So they found something, an outlet for him. So that's great. Um, let's see. How can I ignite interest in activities other than video games?
Yes, so it's very difficult for some kids that this is like what they're interested in, this is their go-to. And so
Mhm.
that's one thing that I have been taught by other professionals, and that I will share. I think that some kids become more addicted to video games,
Mhm.
but I also
Mhm.
think that if you want to, cut back their electronic time and get them interested in other things, it's important to use that open question technique and ask them about the video games, not interrogate them, ask them. Sit down, play them with them, ask them what do they like about it, what interests them. Is it just a go-to, right? They just don't know what else to do, so it's a default. Rather than lecturing and saying, you know, you're addicted, whatever, like we parents sometimes do, I would go more to this collaborative approach, right? And then I would try to sort of have a discussion about, you know, what else would they be interested in? If you find out about the video games, every video game has something, you know, I'm not fans of them, but they have some element to them, right? Something that's interesting. They're mind games, or they're about dexterity. What does that tell you about the kid? And then asking them and suggesting other things they could do. And sometimes we literally broker agreements, you know, where we talk and have those collaborative discussions and say to the teenager, you know, I would like, you know, if you would like this video time, I would like you to agree to try some different activities, because, you know, and talk about what your concerns are in terms of them just being on video games. I'm not a fan of the thing that people are saying a lot now, which is just let all video game time go, and just let it go because of COVID, because I think some kids won't be able to come back from that, and that's all they'll do. And so if you have a kid that you're concerned about, I would absolutely have limits, have other activities, have other things you do, have times on the weekend when you guys are out of the house as a family or doing something, so that you don't have to be the police.
Okay, makes sense. Question here is, somebody has a daughter who's a senior in high school and had a thin social network prior to the pandemic. Since then, no one has reached out to her, and she's understandably hurt as she sees her friends hanging out together on social media. She has developed rejection sensitivity, is very resistant to reaching out. She does have friends that she has group text with regarding schoolwork, but they have not invited her to get together. Any suggestions for her to connect with them?
Sure. So a couple free tools. If you go to CarolineMcGuireAuthor.com or How to ADHD, I have a video with tools on rejection sensitivity, and literally how to help someone cope, because what it is you have these huge feelings, and it doesn't matter that what's happening isn't necessarily worthy of those huge feelings, that it's a perceived rejection. It doesn't matter. You feel that inside. And so that's one, is to cope with that. Two is to help her to reach out more to those friends who are just about school, so that she's social. The other thing I would love to problem solve with her is, you know, are the other people really rejecting her, or are they just hanging out and they're taking actions and they're reaching out to each other and she's not? So sometimes with teenagers, you know, they're at sort of a developmentally insensitive time, and I would like them to be different, but they aren't. And I would like them to reach out to the, you know, the person in the group who's most vulnerable, or the person who's shyest, but sometimes they don't, and they kind of go with whoever texted, right? So one of the things I would say is sometimes it's a perceived rejection, right? And it's not a real rejection. They're just thoughtless, right? So I would love to explore that in a really sensitive, delicate way. Probably she will be a little more explosive, won't want to talk about that. So I would just, over time, you know, ask her, help her with the rejection sensitivity, definitely use those tools I mentioned, and then, you know, helping her to feel okay about little reach outs to these school friends. Send them a funny text, ask them if they want to watch a Netflix movie together, like, you know, hanging out in the virtual world maybe, and then bridge to the real world. But I do really want to know if those kids are really rejecting her, or if it's just they reach out to each other and she doesn't reach out.
Yes, and I've seen too with especially kids, I know this person in particular was a senior, but for younger kids in elementary, middle school, and younger high school before the driving age, There's a lot of that perceived rejection, but what's happening is for a lot of kids, they're hanging out with the kids that they can walk to, and they can't necessarily be driven someplace else to see somebody. So I've watched a lot of that taking place also.
Yes.
Somebody else was just talking about her daughter doesn't mind going back to school, or doesn't mind going back to school and is okay with just hanging out with 4 close friends. Well, okay. You had talked about that earlier. So I think it was more of a comment. I'm thinking of a child who has always struggled socially. He's now a freshman year in college and is not going well. Lack of socialization, friends, and poor time management is taking its toll. He's starting to see that he does better with structure in order to focus and engage, which is wonderful. College during COVID has none of that. Do I need testing, outside coaching, counseling for him? And I can relate, believe me. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so if kids have what's called weak executive function, the management system of the brain, weak organization, COVID is a nightmare, right? So COVID is a nightmare for us as adults. I joke every day that the amount of organization it takes to orchestrate our lives right now it's insane. So I am finding with a lot of college students, I work with a lot of college students, the online learning does not work for them, and they do well with in-person learning or with this what's called scaffolding, right? All the things that used to prop you up, right? And propping you up can be anything from in-person learning being more interesting to, reminders the teachers say to you in person, to the person next to you is taking notes, so you mirror them, right? They're your body double. To your roommates who help you. And so one of the things I would suggest is I would reach out to a professional and think about, is there a diagnosis needed here to get supports from the college? I would look at, is this college going to provide the supports that you need? Some are doing a great job, others it's abysmal. And I would also suggest that if you go to my Facebook feed, Coach Caroline Mcguire, there's always posts, there's always information about this kind of organization, time management. My website also, CarolineMcGuireAuthor.com. And I would also suggest that getting him to sort of figure out what he needs to pay attention and what he needs to be organized, and then like stepping back from there, because we have to figure out, are we sort of muddling through the current model? What do we need to muddle through the current model? But it is really hard for certain kids, and actually I've had many kids who did very well pre-COVID who are struggling at college now.
Yeah. My son's first year of college, and it's been a struggle at times, and he's the quiet young man. And, and as he's finally starting to reach out, he's starting to learn that he's not the only one struggling, which, I guess it's a matter of knowing that it's not just him. Sometimes helps too, with just kind of saying, okay, I can reach out to other people, or I can talk to other people. So many youth are communicating digitally with each other. I have noticed there's a difficulty with understanding the meaning behind some of the communications, or things are misinterpreted. Yes. What recommendation do you have to help youth with improving these communications?
Yes, so I guess I'm sort of dating myself that I grew up in an era before text and before these kind of digital communications. But okay, there's a couple things. In Why Will No One Play With Me, there is a whole lesson track about reading between the lines. So one of the things a lot of kids struggle with is if they had struggles with in-person communication and they don't read social cues well, or they don't read between the lines, or they react too quickly, then they're going to struggle now. The other thing is, I really work with a lot of teenagers and young adults on pausing, right? Like, don't just respond right away, and pause and think about and sort of decoding what something means. A lot of the way that kids communicate, I find, can be really easily misinterpreted. I work with many kids. I get emails from mothers. I get emails from teenagers where they send me screenshots of what people have written, and it's not discernible. And so people get upset and people feel, rejection, or people react to that. And I think we can go back to the old fashioned, like, like, it's okay to pause. It's okay to say, I don't get this. It's okay to say, I'm not sure what you're saying here. And I also am finding that there are forums virtually where kids can actually talk, and it's not all text-based. So if a kid, for instance, has some kind of language-based learning disability, and maybe they've grown up and everything seems fine, that learning disability is going to come out more in those texts and in that virtual interaction at times. So maybe what we want to do is use more forums where they go and they hang out, and not have these long conversations via text or Snapchat or whatever. And I also think that kids need to sort of work with you and parents to think about, what are they going to react to certain things, maybe even like policies, like, if someone says certain things, I'm going to just say, hey, maybe we should talk later, and I'm not going to react. Because one of the things I notice is that there's a lot of stuff that stems from reacting to stuff and, responding back, and miscommunication.
Yeah, and also sometimes it's just easier if you don't understand is pick up the phone and talk.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard. A lot of youth don't want to talk on a phone, but it can clear some things up. So
Absolutely.
let's see. We have time for one more question. And please know, everybody else, that if the question has not been answered during this portion, we will these questions will go to Caroline, and she will answer you via email. We've hit almost every single question, but I can see there's a few more, and we're just coming close to our 3:30 time. So the last question is, what advice do you have for parents on how to approach their teen if they're using substances? And when is it time to see a professional?
So what I would say is that I am not someone licensed, and I'm not a therapist. So I would defer to those folks on this. I think that if they are suspecting it, to reach out to the school guidance counselor or reach out to a therapist and get advice, because it really is a difficult situation, and you don't want to make it worse.
Right. Okay. Michelle, I'm going to bring you back in here. Hold on. I just sent you the webcam request.
Got it. Thank you.
All right.
Hey, I just thought you didn't get to see this question because it just came in.
Okay.
But I do have a couple of thoughts on it, and you all may want to chime in with a couple as well. There's a lot of folks still on the line, so I didn't want to let this question go without at least putting it out there. Okay, so this gentleman works as a correction officer for juveniles who have committed criminal actions. Most of the youth that I work with are low income, very minimal in everything. They have absent parents or incarcerated parents. Some are living with grandparents. Everything is virtual, and they don't have laptops or anything to do their virtual work. Do you know any resources or programs, particularly in Wisconsin, but I know we can utilize this answer nationwide? Any thoughts would be appreciated. So I just wanted to throw out there, I do know that the YMCA, the Y does have a particular program called Y Now for youth, teens that have incarcerated parents. So I don't know that that is active in every state, but I know it is pretty active around the country and worth a check out. And then also through the Y, the Safe Place Services side of the Y, they have some staff that can help direct for career readiness for folks that parents are incarcerated. Are there any additional resources or thoughts that you might have for this group? I mean, we understand we've got a lot of foster parents on the line with us today. We know we have a lot of grandparents. So a caring adult, any caring adult could take a child or a teen through some of this curriculum.
Mhm.
But can we think about it?
Josh Ship was a foster child himself. He is now an adult. He's phenomenal. You can find him online, but he understands the whole how he grew up and what he did and how he pushed every single one of, I believe, 16 foster parents until the very last one gave him, you know, really was able to get through to him. But he is a great resource for youth that are in the foster system to help them, and then youth that just are dealing with parents that aren't in their lives on a regular basis. Caroline, do you have anything?
Well, I first want to say Josh is a great resource. We share a literary agent, but also I do think that any caring adult can help. I know people have been reaching out at the state level to the caseworkers and other people to get resources for students who do not have laptops, do not have that kind of thing. It is absolutely why I wish school would reopen, because I think those kids are really being left out. I also think that it is true, any caring adult can do the things I've talked about today. I often have had grandparents and other people reach out, but I definitely hope that the YMCA and other programs can help, because it's just so difficult, and those are the most vulnerable kids.
Yes. Somebody just quickly asked what's Josh's last name. It's Ship, S-H-I-P-P. Just as we wrap this up, a couple people wanted us to go back and do a few more of the previous slides. So let me see if I can get my computer to decide to do its job today, because it has not been doing it.
Mary Beth, while you're doing that, Caroline,
Yes.
could you remind everyone where they could go to order your book?
Sure. You can go to CarolineMcGuireAuthor.com. You can go to Amazon. Any book store for Why Will No One Play With Me sells the book. And Amazon's price is actually really pretty good. It's kind of interesting. They kept the price low for the past year. Maybe someone at Amazon has a kid who needs friends. So that might be a way. And there is an audio version. Obviously, a lot of it is visual and is sort of step-by-step activities, but a lot of people are auditory. And there is also a Kindle version, and that's very inexpensive. I would just warn you, it doesn't, I guess Kindle books don't have page numbers. I never literally noticed this before, but I'm told it's standard, and I just never noticed. So if you are, trying to sync the audio with the Kindle, or you're trying to look things back,
Okay.
I literally get people writing me all over the world, like, did you know that there's no, and I'm like, I've just learned about this. So, but that is a very inexpensive way, is the Kindle, and it is nicely laid out and everything. It's just, I'd like to touch things.
I know that there's a PDF. I'm sorry, Mary Beth. I know there's a PDF handout that accompanies Audible. Is there like worksheets with the book as well, or?
Yeah, so in the book are like all the worksheets, right? It's all of the lessons laid out in the hard copy. What we did with the Audible is we gave certain activities as a PDF that you get with the download of the Audible, but I'm being totally transparent. It's not the entire book, because it was actually like the biggest PDF file ever created and crashed all of Hachette's system at one point. More than cookbooks or anything. So, and that's because it's a highly visual book, because some kids, especially if they have certain learning disabilities, they need that visual. So I made it a highly visual book so that the kids who have those issues can look at a visual, for instance, of how to read between the lines, and they can see it laid out. And by the way, if your teenager thinks they're too cool for some of the fun graphics, just don't show it to them. Like, that's what I do.
Okay, that's funny. A couple of people just asked for a couple of these screens, and I'm just going to go through them real slow. And they just had asked for some of these to come back up, so we'll just go through these again. And then these are the additional websites. Remember, everybody, in the handouts, you do have screenshots. We did a PDF of the slides. If for some reason you're having a hard time reading the slides, I realize you can email me at marybeth@operationparent.org, and I will resend it in a different format for you. These are our upcoming webinars. And again, sign up at operationparent.org and go to resources, webinars. And then lastly, this is the code for if you want to buy one parent handbook at 20% off. It's web102720. You must order by November 6th. You do that online at operationparent.org. If you want to do a bulk order, okay, you want to do a bulk order of 100 or more parent handbooks, you need to either call our office at the number listed or email ann@operationparent.org. All of this information is also in the follow-up email that you will get tomorrow. And tomorrow, when you get the follow-up email, you will get the recording link, the survey link, certificate of attendance, and this information, as well as a link to another handout from Caroline that she has shared with you. Okay? And Caroline, I'm sure a few more questions will come in, and I will put that together and send that off to you tomorrow. Okay?
Absolutely, I will answer them. Thank you.
All right. Well, with
Thanks,
that,
Caroline.
Michelle, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
No, just thank you for
Thank you.
taking teens from that I can't mindset to like I probably can, and then I will because my mom, dad, or a caring adult taught me that I can do these things. So I remember that graphic so well from your PDF where you take a kid. I mean, a teen with anything gets themselves in that mindset that I can't, and
Yes.
you're showing us how to get them to I can and I will and I will. So thank you for that.
No,
you.
thank you for giving me this opportunity to share, and to everyone who is so caring who's on the line, thank you so much for what you do, because this is a very difficult time, and I'm just so grateful that there's so many people out there helping our teenagers so that they can weather it, because it really is a hard time for them. I feel for them.
Yes.
Exactly.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and shut down. And again, thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Michelle. And we'll see you at our next webinar.
But
All
good
right.
job, Mary Beth. Good job, Caroline.
Thank you.
Bye.